All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. And as more people join us, they'll just be able to hop right in. But my name is Olivia Miller. I'm an assistant dean of admission here at Colgate. Super excited to chat with you all here tonight. Excited to answer some questions specifically about early decision. When I work with students coming to Colgate, I primarily work with students coming from Westchester County, New York, and then internationally from Africa, the Middle East, and China. So if you're from any of those areas, an extra special welcome to you. And of course, I'm not here alone. I have two of our wonderful students who are joining me here who were early decision students when they were applying to Colgate. And you'll learn a little bit more about their experiences and why they ended up choosing Colgate. But just so you can get a sense of how our session will work, and then I'll have them go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about the differences between early decision and regular decision, the pros and cons of each of those different choices. I have a few questions for Emily and Brandon, and then after we ask them those questions, we'll open it up for a general Q&A. So any questions that you have about Colgate, applying early decision, the application process, anything that we can be helpful with tonight, we will do our best to answer those in 45 minutes. So we'll wrap up right around 7:45 Eastern time. And with that, I will turn it over to Brandon. He'll start us off introducing themselves.
Okay, well, good evening or good morning to some of you. My name is Brandon Williams. I am a senior here at Colgate. Yeah, my majors. I double major in physics and Russian Eurasian studies. I'm from Newark, New Jersey, and yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm a junior coming from Maine. I am a history major and an educational studies minor in the teacher preparation program. And outside of admissions, I'm the president of the Model Arab League. I'm an Arabic tutor. I'm a Yes Means Yes facilitator. I'm a member of a Greek life organization, and I run the Share Your Story Colgate Instagram. So yeah, that's a little bit about, oh my gosh, a little bit about me.
End of a long, busy week, I'm sure. We're leading up to family weekend, so a lot of big projects are due by the end of the week. But like I said, you'll learn a little bit more about what Emily and Brandon have been involved in and their experiences choosing and ending up at Colgate. But first, I do want to spend some time talking about early decision and kind of talking about early decision generally, but also how it relates specifically to Colgate. So I'll start just with our deadlines. We are an early decision school, as I'm sure that does not surprise any of you joining us tonight. We have both early decision 1 and early decision 2. So early decision 1 has a November 15th deadline. Those students would find out about their admission decision around mid-December. People applying early decision 2 or regular decision will apply by January 15th. People applying early decision 2 will find out around mid to late February, compared to students applying regular decision, and those students will find out around mid to late March. We don't differentiate between early decision 1 and 2. They are the exact same thing for us. They just have different dates. And students who apply by January 15th as a regular decision candidate can actually convert their application to early decision 2 all the way up until February 1st. So we do want to give students that extra flexibility in the process, that flexibility to make that decision as far along as we can. Of course, we do need to have a deadline for those, but we do have it all the way down to February 1. So with that in mind, it really is the one way that students are able to share that Colgate is their #1 choice. We don't track any demonstrated interest throughout our process. And so we don't differentiate between the two because we understand that there's a variety of reasons you might be waiting to make that choice. It is that binding agreement, right? So if you're applying early decision and you're admitted, it means that you'll withdraw any other applications you have to any other institution, and then you would enroll at Colgate. So regardless of if that's a concern about a financial aid policy, a concern about the weather, wanting to visit with snow on the ground, since that's a large majority of the experience you'll have on campus, we understand that some students just aren't ready to make that binding decision by that November 15th deadline. So thinking a little bit more specifically about the advantages of early decision, I mentioned that it's that binding agreement. And it really is this way that you're able to show the school that you're applying to, specifically at Colgate, the way that we view early decision is that it's a clear first choice. We're excited about students that are excited about Colgate, and it means that you're ready to enroll at the institution upon your admission. So for us, it shows that strong level of interest. And again, it's the only way that we're able to track that level of interest. So coming to an event like this, coming on campus, doing a Colgate conversation with one of our current seniors, all of that is really important because it's giving you that extra understanding of what it might be like to be a Colgate student, but it doesn't actually have any impact on your admission decision. So for us, we don't want to look at the ways that students have chosen to learn about the institution as an indicator to see whether or not they're actually interested in coming and being a Colgate student. And so early decision for us really is that big indicator of interest in Colgate. Thinking generally about early decision, a lot of people will ask, okay, well, what's the chance of my admission in early decision versus regular decision? And it's often hard to say exactly what that chance will be. It's definitely a much smaller pool. There are far fewer students applying at early decision as opposed to regular decision. So it's a lot easier for colleges like Colgate to admit qualified candidates in comparison with when we're in that regular decision round, because the pool of candidates is just that much larger. Colleges, including Colgate, can typically enroll about 50% of their class through a combination of early decision 1 and 2, or any early decision programs. Again, it's that one way that we're able to see that a school is your number one choice. And we're excited, like I said, about those students. And so making up around 50% of the class, last year's admitted class filled about 55% through a combination of early decision 1 and 2. So it really was a big decision and a big part of our process, and it has been even pre-COVID. I know there's been a lot of discussion of have schools altered their admission decisions, specifically looking at early decision because of COVID and all of the intricacies of how that impacted the college admission process. For us, it really didn't. We were always looking at early decision as a way to fill about 50 to 55% of our class. And so for us, it maintains its importance in the process, but it's not more important than it was pre-COVID. So that's a little bit about the benefits of early decision on the admission side of things, but I do want to touch on the importance of regular decision in the process as well, because there are still a lot of pros to regular decision, even though we are primarily talking about making that choice to apply early decision. So one of the advantages of regular decision is really just more time, right? Even beyond when you apply to schools, the amount of time you have to eventually make that official decision of where you plan to enroll. You have up until May 1st to make that decision. So in comparison with a November 15 deadline or a January 15 deadline, May 1 is obviously much farther along in the year. So you have that extra flexibility to learn more about a school, maybe travel to campus, speak to more current students, to really get a sense of what that school is like. And you have a bit more time to compare schools if you're having trouble figuring out if one of those is coming to the top of your list. The other really big pro for regular decision is your ability to compare financial aid packages if you're applying for financial aid, right? If that binding decision includes a financial aid package, you're bound to that financial aid package. Of course, there is the ability to appeal your financial aid package. We're not going to hold you to a decision that is going to financially really negatively impact your family. But if you and your family want to have the chance to compare financial aid packages, the way that you're really able to do that is through applying regular decisions. So those two, more time and just the ability to compare those packages, would be the really big pros of regular decision. And so we hope that that gives you a better understanding from the admission side of things, how we use early decision, why it's important in our process, and the ways that it typically impacts our admitted class. So with that, I know that's a lot of kind of just cold hard facts on our end, but of course, student experiences are much more important when you're making this decision, because I know that it can be it can feel like this really daunting choice to make, because it is that binding agreement. So sometimes hearing student stories who ended up making that decision, it often makes it a bit or is often a bit helpful in the process. So with that, thinking back on your own college application processes, so even before you decided to apply to Colgate and apply early decision to Colgate, can you both talk a little bit about what your college application or your college search process looked like? What were you looking for in a school? What things were standing out to you as you kind of dwindled down your list to find your official college list? And either of you can jump in and go first.
Yeah, I can start here. So a lot of the things that I was looking for mainly were schools on the East Coast, liberal arts, relatively small, probably under 5,000 students was kind of what I was looking for. I was also looking for schools with a strong educational studies program, because I've always known I wanted to be a teacher. So that was kind of really important to me. And then the last thing I was looking for was a really strong sense of community. I really wanted a school where I would be able to build relationships with my peers, friendships, lifelong relationships, anything like that. And so I was talking with my guidance counselor. I was doing a little bit of searching online. And my guidance counselor pointed me in the direction of Colgate. My dad actually went here, so I did know a little bit about it, but I didn't know as much as my guidance counselor was able to tell me. And so I toured, and I guess the rest is history. But yeah, Brandon, if you have anything else, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. When looking into where I wanted to go to school, I had several different points on mind. The first one that popped up was somewhere that I can not get away from my mom, but far enough that she wouldn't be able to visit me every weekend, which Colgate definitely fits that regard. Something else I wanted was a place where I could balance my kind of like education along with sports. Though I when playing in high school, I played football. I knew that D1 football would be a little bit of a jump, but being able to join the track team once I go to Colgate definitely like widened up my options, especially being athletic while at school. I also liked a school that gave me a strong like engineering process while being able to study something different. Like I said before, I double major in physics and Russian Eurasian studies. The physics comes from being in our pre-engineering program here at Colgate, while being able to study the Russian language and Russian culture. Being able to have a small liberal arts college, I'm not only able to like take all these classes, but be able to balance it with my like work-life balance, which is pretty cool.
Definitely. And you both kind of touched on this a little bit, but I'd love if you could go into like a little bit more detail, even bringing yourself back to the moment where you were making that decision. Okay, I'm going to apply to Colgate, early decision. What was it about Colgate that made you say, okay, I'm ready to make this binding decision? And how did it kind of get on your radar or start to differentiate itself from some of our kind of pure liberal arts schools, pure smaller Northeast schools that I'm sure were on your list at some point or kind of in your orbit when you were making those final decisions. But Emily, if you want to just tell us a little bit, bring us back to, I don't know, however many years ago that was when you were making that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the major thing for me was the campus visit. I know some people are not able to visit campus. I was fortunate enough to be able to, and a lot of I had done a like really high number of college tours throughout like a week with my mom. So we were driving around the East Coast. And neither of us had ever been to New York State before. So we noticed, wow, this is really far away. We had stopped at a couple other places. They were kind of in my brain, they didn't suit what I particularly wanted, but I could see myself there. I just didn't know if I could see myself fully fitting in. And I toured, I came to Colgate and I toured and I walked around with my tour guide. And the first thing that I noticed was people, as I walked around campus, were not even just saying hi to my tour guide, but they were also saying hi to me and encouraging me to go Gate, like, hope you're having a good time, which was something that had never happened before. And that instantly kind of gave me a feeling of a sense of community and belonging here that I hadn't experienced anywhere else. I called my dad after the tour immediately, and he said that it's exactly what he had experienced also, and that's kind of what pushed him in the direction of Colgate. And I kind of, from that moment, just knew that this was the place for me, and this was one of the only places I had seen that I could see myself not only fitting in and having an enjoyable college experience, but also being truly happy and excited to be a Colgate student, which was what ultimately pushed me to apply early decision because it was the school that I knew that I wanted 100%.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Brandon, what about you bringing yourself back to making that official decision? What was it? How did it feel? What officially made you say yes to Colgate?
Yeah, thinking back now, it was terrifying for all the wrong reasons, I want to say. I didn't really know where I wanted to apply. I wasn't able to kind of visit Colgate until I actually came in for my freshman year. But during my junior and senior year of high school, I worked for Audible Incorporated as a software development engineering intern. And a lot of my coworkers actually went to Colgate. So when my counselor brought Colgate to my attention, she said, it has all the things you asked me for, here, go apply. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I should do some research. But without telling me, she actually went to my workplace, which was literally about 3 steps away from my high school, and told all of my coworkers in my department that I wanted to apply to Colgate. So every alumni came up, they made a meeting room for us. And then one of my coworkers came up to me and was like, hey, Brandon, let's have a meeting. So I fully thought I was getting fired. It was really bad. So I was terrified trying to figure out all the reasons I would get fired. It was probably drinking too much coffee. I still have that problem at this point. But we sat down in the room. They opened up this giant, it was kind of like a webinar like this, but it was kind of more like an Uvu web chat practically. I talked to all the alumni, their family members, friends who went to Colgate. They showed me pictures, all their different clubs and activities, what they majored in. And my decision was really based off like, how could these people be so happy about the place they went about 20 20 years ago and still have this giant smile on their face. Could I be that same person? And the only way to find out is if I really went. So I ended up applying to one school. I don't suggest it, but it happens.
I don't know if I've ever heard that before, or that story before, but that's I think very indicative of the Colgate alum that you'll meet out in the world. I say that as a very biased Colgate alum myself, but we are all very, very passionate about this place, and I think it speaks a lot to the experience you have on campus. But now that you are both Colgate students, you're both well into your Colgate experiences. What is it about Colgate that kind of like keeps you excited to come back to campus after longer breaks? What are your favorite parts of the student experience now that you're here?
What I feel like keeps me coming back is in the cheesiest way possible, the wanting to learn more in every sense of the way, like learn more about myself, about the community, about everything that I do on campus. I'm a part of way too many different things. I have to say I have terrible time management that comes with it, but being able to meet new people, network with them in the several different clubs I'm a part of, meeting alumni that are not only just Colgate alumni, but Colgate track alumni, and also seeing all the different professors really happy that I'm interested in their research, whether it be in the physics or the Russian department, and just having the opportunity to come and do like well-rounded is not even the word for at this point. Being able to like look forward towards this really keeps me coming back after every break.
I think the two major things for me are the community. As I've said before, I think it's a really supportive place. Almost like everybody that I've met is incredibly kind. They're welcoming. They want you to be here. They're so excited to have you. That doesn't just go for the student body, but it goes for the faculty as well. They're excited to see Colgate students there because they know that they're excited to be there too, which definitely changes the dynamic in a classroom or on a campus in general. And I think the other thing too is that every semester I've been here, and I've been here for 4.5 semesters now, I've done something completely new that I never would have thought I would have done. And I think the excitement of trying to explore with all of the opportunities that Colgate has to offer kind of keeps me more excited to come back every break, which is honestly why I'm starting to get a little sad that I'm going abroad next semester, because it'll be the longest break I've ever taken from this place since I've started here. But I think, honestly, I'll be the most excited to come back that I've ever been my senior year. So yeah, definitely the opportunity in the community for sure.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sad to see you go for a semester, but if there's one thing I've learned in my time at Colgate, it's that students who travel off campus are very excited to share all the wonderful things they did when they were not here. So I'm sure you will not be an outlier in that situation. But I want to thank both of you for sharing a bit about your experiences of finding Colgate, the college process, what really made you say yes, and then also what it's been like now that you've been students for the last few years. But I want to make sure that we spend a lot of time answering any of your questions that you've all come with tonight. And so I see that there are a few that have already come into the Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to just put them directly in there. We will do our best to get through as many as we can, but we will make sure to also share our contact information if you have any questions after today. We are all more than happy to be resources for you to answer questions or point you in the direction for things as they come up. So I will just go ahead and start with the Q&A as these questions come in. And the first question is financial aid need impacted or factored as a part of the early decision process? So can it be seen as a show of commitment for someone who needs financial aid if they're applying early decision, or is it negative regardless of the binding agreement? So this is a really great question, and this is, at least for Colgate, and this is obviously going to be dependent on the institution, but at Colgate, it's definitely not seen as a negative, but it's also not seen as an additional way to show commitment. So once you're applying early decision, that's going to show the same level of commitment to us for a student who is applying for financial aid versus not applying for financial aid. But the really important part of that is that our financial aid policies and packages will be the exact same for you if you apply as an early decision candidate or a regular decision candidate. We are committed to meeting 100% of every admitted student's demonstrated need, and that is regardless of if they are a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident, an international student, or if they are an early decision or regular decision candidate. So I always encourage you, if you are a U.S. citizen, there are some calculators on our website that do a really great job of estimating what that financial aid package might look like for you. So especially if you're considering applying early decision, just having that information kind of, I know can add that additional level of, or that feeling of safety so that you know going in approximately what that might be. But it's definitely not a negative to apply early decision if you're applying for financial aid, but it's not that additional show of commitment. All right, the next question that came in is, if you guys had one application tip for applying early decision one to Colgate, what would it be? I want to throw that to both of you as the students who did apply early decision, and then I'll fill in anywhere I can.
I think one thing is don't fill it out last minute. That will stress you out as it did me when I was doing it last minute. And then another thing too is just try and represent yourself in the best way possible. When you're writing your essay, don't write it like if you're writing it about somebody else, try and connect it back to you so it's not about somebody else entirely. The admission officers really want to know about you. They don't want to know about anybody else. They want to see like what you're doing, what you're excited about, how you're doing academically, things like that. And I think the best way to do that is to just talk about yourself and try and paint that picture of who you are, even though they can't really talk to you about it. This is kind of their discussion with you through a bunch of different papers. So.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. Especially when writing your personal statement. If it ends up being another COVID story, again, it's your COVID story. It is a very unique time in everybody's life. No one had the same story. But try to make it less about COVID and more about how you faced a challenge, whether it be COVID or not, and how you've gotten through it or working getting through it. That's the kind of thing we're looking for, specifically in that essay, I would say.
Definitely. I don't know if I could have said that better myself. I would highlight two things. One, proofread. If you have a typo in your essay, you will not be denied because of your typo. Sometimes we notice it, sometimes we don't, but making sure that you are going through and making sure that what you wanted to get across is what's getting across by the time you finish your essay. But the second thing I would really focus on is make sure your application is about you and not about other people. So make sure you're writing about your story, why it's important to you. You can write about how something else impacted you, but make sure you're getting to that why and the how. Why is it important to you? How has this impacted how you think about yourself, how you think about the world around you, how you think about your future? And I really do challenge you not to have anyone else's name in your personal statement, unless it's really important to the story or your story is confusing without it. Of course, there are extenuating circumstances to that piece of advice, but make sure that you're being selfish with your writing and you're really writing about yourself and not someone else's story, like Emily was saying. All right, the next question is, are freshmen allowed to go undeclared after admission? I can grab that one really fast. Yes, most definitely. We actually look at every single admission candidate as if they are undecided. So every single student comes into Colgate undeclared, and you have to officially declare your major. You can do that from the first second you step on campus, but we do encourage you to wait a little bit. You have until the end of your second year on campus to officially declare your major. All right. So just a question about how long it takes for an early decision, actual decision to come through on an application. So for anyone applying early decision one, you will find out your admission decision around mid-December. We typically try to get that decision out on December 13th, but it's not the same every single year. So be on the lookout for that date in an email. And then early decision two, everyone will find out around mid to late February. Again, that date does change every year, but that'll be clearly shared to everyone prior to the day that we do release the decisions. Another question, just does ED2 have the same acceptance rate as ED1? That's a really great question. It's not something that we look at. So we're not looking to, when we say we bring in about 50 or 55% of the class through early decision, we aren't also under that saying, okay, our goal is to bring in 40% of the class through early decision one and 10% of the class or 15% of the class through early decision two. Early decision one tends to be a larger pool of students, so we do tend to bring in more students through early decision one, but there isn't a specific acceptance rate that we're trying to hit for either of those things because we don't really differentiate it in our process as far as looking at data goes. So the pool changes every year, the size of the pool changes every year, so that really is just going to be dependent on who's applying, but we will every year still try to fill about 50 or 55% of the class through early decision one and two. All right. This is just a question about how to fill out the ED agreement. That's a great question. The form is available on our website. It needs 3 signatures. It needs your signature, it needs one of your parents' signatures or guardian signatures, and then lastly, it needs a school counselor, a guidance counselor, a college counselor, or a school official if you don't have a school counselor to sign that. And then you can submit that to us via email, just admission@colgate.edu. And that is just the 3 signatures are needed for that form to be official, and then we'll convert your application in our system to early decision. Let me see. Oh, this is a good question. What does leadership look like on campus? How have you guys taken on leadership roles? How have you been impacted by other students' leadership when you were kind of in that younger role on campus? Both of you are student leaders. I know you.
I'll go first.
Okay, great.
So I think students here really like to be involved in any capacity they can be, and especially once they get more involved with certain activities as they continue through their college career, they really like to become leaders of these activities. So for example, I am the president of the Model Arab League. I started that my sophomore year. I was really heavily influenced by the leaders of the club during my time as just a member. They all graduated last year, but they became some of my closest friends really, really quickly. They mentored me through the process, and they helped me with my Arabic homework, things like that. And then from there, I became a leader of that. I'm also a Yes Means Yes facilitator on campus. That is part of our physical education program, which teaches about consent and sex positivity. And as a participant of that, I did it for 7 weeks, and then I applied to be a facilitator because it impacted me so much that I wanted to help other people experience that as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for people to be involved in a wide range of like experiences, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something you thought that you were going to do in high school either, which is kind of cool. So
Yeah, definitely. Leadership on campus can be a large spectrum, I have to say. You can be part of, at this point, I'm part of about 12 different clubs, one of them being Colgate's Grilling Society. You can literally help students learn how to cook steaks and stuff like that. Or you can be on the other side and working with admission. At this point, I'm a senior intern helping new ambassadors learn not only how to give tours, but what makes the university work as a university. So it can literally just branch off into different sections at that point.
Great. We had another question come in. Sorry, I was just answering one via the chat. About just the test optional policy and how test optional or applying test optional or choosing to send your testing in will impact your chance of being accepted. So the first thing to know is that my answer is going to be the exact same if you're applying early decision or if you're applying regular decision. So we truly are test optional. I cannot emphasize that enough. If we see an application that does not have any testing on it, all we will do is check a box that says no testing, and then we flip the page. We're not asking any additional questions about why you didn't submit testing. Do we think it's because you took it and didn't do well? Do we think it's because you didn't want to take the time to study for it? It does not matter. Quite frankly, we do not have the time to wonder and try to figure out why it is that you didn't submit your testing. So if you don't have it, we're not looking at it. For students who are like, okay, great, I took it. How do I know if I should be submitting it or not? We share a middle 50% for accepted students for last year's class. So that's on our website. We have the middle 50% for the SAT and the ACT. We do super scores. So if you want to submit your scores to us, I recommend just submitting all of them. We'll super score them for you, and we'll only look at that super scored data point. We won't look at all of the other scores that helped add up to that super score. And you can self-report your scores to us on your application. I recommend self-reporting them because it can get really complicated when you try to officially report them through the different testing websites as you're sending them to all these different schools. Once you submit your application and you get your applicant portal, there will be a very clear space to self-report your testing to us. It's free. We will require official scores if you choose to enroll, but through the application process, there is a self-reporting option for those test scores. For students who are submitting their test scores, we will look at it, right? It becomes an additional piece of your application. So We're still looking at your school transcript. We're still looking at the classes that you've chosen to take. So we're not just looking at your testing as your only academic piece, right? We are really looking at your transcript to see how you've done in your classes. If you're someone who says, okay, I didn't do so well in math in junior year, but I did really, really, really well on the math section of the SAT or the ACT, that's when those additional that additional data point can be really helpful for us when we're reviewing your application. So I would say think really critically about whether or not you feel like it would help your application. If you feel like you're proud of your score and you're excited for us to see it, by all means, submit it. But if you're someone who's saying, I just don't know, I think I could have done better, and I don't think this is a good reflection of who I am as a student, it really is as simple as that to not submit your scores. Yeah. All right. Next question. Does the campus at all seem isolated? How have you guys felt going to school in a small rural town in New York State?
Yeah. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't say it's completely isolated. Yes, we are kind of like in a very small area. But if you kind of just like sit in your room and stare out your window and wait for something to happen, I promise you it won't. I always say that Colgate, even though we are a small institution, we have a lot of different options to explore the different parts of your personality. You can be part of several different clubs that you personally don't identify with, but can meet several different people that are different from you, whether it be geologic or mentally at that point. Just and something that we also have several different cities that are surrounding us. Like we have a Colgate Cruiser, a bus, a small campus that could take you to like Syracuse Destiny Mall on the weekends if you would like to have a mall setting, because we don't technically have one here, or just going into downtown Hamilton and meeting store owners. Like they're all great people. A lot of the stores that were opened by Colgate alumni or friends of Colgate alumni. So they're all great people to talk to, especially about experience within the town of Hamilton. So I would say that is the best way to deal with like kind of like isolation of Colgate, I guess. The one thing I am still struggling with is the silence. Newark is not this quiet.
My hometown is pretty quiet, so I'm kind of used to it. I think that Colgate throws so many events throughout the week that you honestly feel like you're never bored. There's always something to do. If you are bored, you can literally look up the list of things that Colgate sends out pretty much every week, and there's going to be something going on at that time. I also think that students are always doing things, clubs are always putting on events. You'll always have something to do. And I never really noticed that it's kind of a small area. If I were to drive, like 10 minutes down Utica Street, I would see a bunch of cornfields and I'd be like, oh, this is in the middle of central New York. But when I'm in this area, I honestly don't really ever leave it, because unless I'm going home, because there's so much to do here that I don't ever feel the need to go anywhere else.
Awesome. Thank you guys for sharing that. It's definitely quiet. Coming from New York City originally, sometimes surprises me when I go back home. I'm like, oh yeah, there's noise in most places, but it really is nice to kind of be able to separate yourself from that and focus on a really tight-knit community. There are a few questions about how we review applications. Specifically, do we review applications holistically? But then also what happens if your school doesn't offer something like AP courses or IB courses or honors courses? And so I think both of those questions kind of go hand in hand. So we are committed to reading applications holistically. We really want to get to know you as a student, as a person through your application. And so we try to do that as best we can through looking at your activities, reading your personal statement, really figuring out what it is that's important to you that you focused your time on. Something that you've chosen to write your personal statement on is usually something that's pretty important to you. And then also getting to know you through your recommendation letters and their eyes. How have you impacted your school community? How do you interact with your peers? How do you approach different projects or long-term essays, things like that in your classes? So we really do try to get a well-rounded understanding of who you are as a person and a student and the ways that you might impact our school community at Colgate. But we're also holistically looking at your academic side, things like your transcripts and your the courses that you're taking, if you supply us with testing, but we're reading within the context of your high school. So we're never going to compare you to a student who went to a different high school. We're not honestly comparing you to a student who did go to your high school, but in the sense that we're not going to look at you as a student, and I'm going to use Emily and Brandon as an example since you both definitely went to different high schools. If Emily's school offered 24 APs and she's taken 10 of them, and then I look at Brandon, and Brandon's school is not an AP school and they don't offer APs, they offer a few honors courses. Brandon's taken a few of the honors courses, has no AP classes. It would be entirely impossible for me to say, okay, well, Emily's taken 10, why doesn't Brandon have 10? Because his school just doesn't offer them. So we're, again, looking at the context of the high school. So we are looking for you to take advantage of the rigor that's available to you, but not take advantage of rigor that's not available to you. So if you do not go to a school that offers AP courses, it is not an expectation that you are studying for AP tests by yourself on your own time. Focus on the classes that you do have available to you. Focus on doing well on those. Don't focus on taking other tests for a different curriculum that's not available to you. All right. There's a question just about how to apply through Common App, through the Colgate website. There are 3 different applications that we accept through Colgate. One of those is the Common application, the second is the Coalition application, and the third being the QuestBridge application. Whichever one you're already planning on using or the one that you've already started filling out is the one that you should. We don't have a preference for any of those. I will mention though that you can't actually apply directly through the Colgate website. There's a checklist on there so that you can see what the requirements are for your application, but the actual application itself will be on either the Common application, the Coalition application, or the QuestBridge application. All right. Another question that I see popping up a few times is just how easy is it to change majors after you've declared? If you declare, for example, an environmental studies major and you decide, actually, maybe this isn't for me, can you change that? What flexibility is there?
Yeah, I feel like it's pretty easy to change your major. They just rather that you declare at the end of your sophomore year to make sure you have some kind of foundation to take classes with. But literally right after that, you can talk with your advisor, work with other professors in the department you would like to look into. And it's just as easy as that, getting signatures.
Yep, agreed. Super, super easy. As long as you have the flexibility in your schedule to actually finish whatever you want your new major to be, there's typically not an issue. We have a question just about what happens with ED students if they are not admitted, excuse me. Are they frequently deferred to regular decision? Are they frequently waitlisted? We do really try in our early decision round to give you an official decision. We don't want to have to pull you along through the process if that's not something that's realistic in the long run. So we don't want to just keep you on the hook. So usually you'll get an official final decision. That being said, we do sometimes defer students and we do sometimes waitlist students. Waitlisting happening more traditionally in early decision 2, not so much in early decision 1. That would be when you would be deferred to regular decision. So those 2 decisions kind of coming out separately as early decision 1 and 2 with being deferred or waitlisted. But we really do try to find a final decision unless there's something that we're waiting on in your application. All right, I saw another question come through, and it's just, what is one of your favorite things to do in the town of Hamilton? Easy question. If you had to go downtown and do one thing, what would it be?
Farmers market. Easy peasy. I love the farmers market. It happens every Saturday on the town green from, oh my God, I don't know what time it starts in the morning. I normally have work on Saturdays, so I don't normally get there on time, but it ends at 12 and it's great. All these like local farmers come and they bring their stuff. It's a lot cheaper than the grocery store, so I'll do a lot of my shopping then. Me and one of my housemates wanted to make Swedish meatballs a couple weeks ago, and we found all the ingredients for that for under $15, which was awesome. That meal lasted us several days. They have flowers. The people are so nice. And it's just a really good, like fun, very small town energy type thing, which I really love. So.
Brandon, what about you? Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Definitely the small town feel like really helps with it, specifically because like everyone that you could work with in any work study job or job on in general on campus, most people live in the town of Hamilton or adjacent. And just if I was like dropped in the middle of downtown Hamilton, I'd go visit one of my coworkers. He's usually throwing a barbecue every weekend, especially if it's nice outside. And just being able to like walk down to his house and say, "Hi, how are your kids?" and then sit down and eat a hot dog with him is amazing most weekends.
And as weird as that sounds, it is a very normal experience for Colgate students to see their professors like that. I know it can start to sound weird as you talk to students who are going to other schools, but that is a very typical Colgate student experience. I see just a few quick questions about the application process. What parts of the application are officially required by the application deadline? For early decision, that is just going to be the formal application. Supplemental materials like your transcript, recommendation letters, those are not due directly on the 15th, but they are due shortly after, and there will be more information once you submit your application as to when those deadlines are, but there is some flexibility. So if your teachers have not submitted your recommendation letters yet, don't worry, don't stress them out. Your application is not going to be at a disadvantage because they haven't submitted that by November 15th. There is another question just about some supplemental prompts that we have as a part of our application. They are truly an optional piece, just as the testing is. They're just a chance for you to get to, or for us to get to know you better throughout the application. So if there's things that you wish you'd been able to speak about on your application that you weren't able to, that's what that space is there for. We have 3 supplemental prompts. They are optional in that you could submit none, you could submit 1, you can submit 2, you can submit all 3. All of that is up to you. And they're available to submit on your applicant portal. So if you are looking at an application like the common application and you don't see supplemental prompts, you are not going crazy, they are just not there. So you'll submit the application as if we don't have any, and then once you get your applicant portal, that's where you'll submit the questions if you choose to. They have a little bit of a later deadline, and that's also very clearly put on your applicant portal. So if you submit directly on a deadline date, you won't immediately get your applicant portal, but don't stress if you're prepared to submit those supplemental prompts. The questions themselves are available on our website, so you can take a look at those and start writing your answers even before you officially submit your application. I also see a question about international students requesting interviews. So we don't actually offer any formal interviews. We offer what we call Colgate admission conversations. And that's an opportunity to sit down either with a Colgate student, a current senior, or one of our alumni to just talk more about their experience, answer questions that are more specific to things that you're interested in, stuff you haven't been able to get answered in more formal settings like this. So really just a chance for you to sit down one-on-one with a member of the Colgate community. They are non-evaluative, they are not a requirement as a part of the application, but you can request one directly on our website. And then another question for international students specifically about applying early decision 1. There are certain schools that will suggest to international students who are applying for financial aid that they will not admit those students in an early decision round and that those students will be directly deferred to a regular decision. Colgate is not one of those schools. So if you are an international student applying for financial aid, you are more than welcome to submit an early decision application. And we do admit international students with financial aid in early decision 1 and 2. So that is a Colgate specific policy that won't be true for all schools or all of our peer schools. And as we approach 7:45, I do just have one last question for our students, and then we'll all make sure to share our contact information because I know there's a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to tonight. And the last question I'll ask our students is something I saw come up a few times in the Q&A, and it's just, what's your favorite tradition that Colgate has that you've been able to partake in as a Colgate student?
I think my favorite tradition is when the lights go up on the Willow Path. So if you haven't been to Colgate before, we have a path that leads up to campus from like the town area that's lined with willow trees. And every year before we go home for winter break, in the past couple of years, they've done it for spring break also. I'm not sure if that's particularly regular, but they line it with Christmas lights. Which is probably one of my favorite things to see. I get genuinely so excited. I like shriek when they come out because it's just my favorite thing to see on campus. They keep them up for a whole week, kind of to keep the student spirits up during finals week. And it's just really fun to walk through with your friends. It's really pretty. So
I'd say my favorite Colgate tradition is something we do in track, is that when the seniors are graduating, they take the one item that every senior before them has passed down to them, and they say the perfect freshman to give it to, just someone who embodies they say the soul of the person who gave you the same thing. It can be as easy from like a really cool pen, whether it be like a quill and ink, to like a giant poster that just has a lot of meaning to a lot of people. And it's just a really fun and like cute thing to do.
Awesome. Those are two great traditions. I have to agree with the lights on Willow Path. I was not a track athlete, so I can't say that I agree, that I particularly respond to that one, but it does sound really fun. The lights are really pretty, especially for those of us that are here past finals. They actually stay up over New Year's. So it's definitely a very festive experience for the whole community. But with that, I want to thank everyone again for taking some time out of their day, wherever you are in the world, morning, afternoon, night, to learn a little bit more about Colgate. And we hope that this was a helpful session for you. I'll ask both of our students to just put their contact information into the chat. So if you have any more questions about the student experience, please feel free to reach out to either Emily or Brandon. And if you have any more questions specifically about the application process or early decision, I'm more than happy to answer those questions for you. And so with that, there goes Emily's contact information. I'll give people just a few seconds to go ahead and copy that down. And with that, again, thank you so much. And go Gate. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.